A few months ago, when I was fresh out of college and a tad too confident, I applied for a job working in comics. I didn't get it, which is really not relevant to the story, but is worth mentioning for context. When I applied for the application, it posed a question in the cover letter. Basically, what superhero do you relate to most and why? I thought about it for a long time, especially because comics are kind of a quintessential part of my life, I'm not gonna lie. They've undoubtedly shaped how I read, absorb, and engage with media. So anyways, I decided on Jennifer Walters, aka the She-Hulk. With Marvel releasing the trailer for She-Hulk Attorney at Law, I've been thinking a lot about this character in the past couple of weeks. I brought up that little anecdote at the beginning for two reasons. First, because this video is about She-Hulk, obviously, but also because I think it's important for everyone and anyone to be able to have a comic that they think represents them or a hero that they could look up to. So if you allow me to tangent, I want to talk about why I like She-Hulk so much. If you want to skip it and just listen to me probably complain about the trailer or whatever, then I will put a timestamp so that you can do that as well. Jennifer Walters hit Marvel Comics in February 1980 with the Savage She-Hulk #1. The cousin of Bruce Banner, Jen has a similar power set with super strength, durability, and a glamorous green complexion. But she also usually keeps her mind when she hulks out, which is a pretty big difference from her cousin Bruce. She also usually has a very different personality from her cousin, being more boisterous and flirty and just wilder than the more mild-mannered Bruce Banner. At the same time, She-Hulk has changed with the times and whims of the writers, so she can be as hulked out as the Hulk is, and in recent years, she has definitely become less funny or humorous depending on who's got the reins. Jennifer Walters has been a lawyer, a sex symbol, and an absolute star. At the same time, she's been a down-on-your-luck, rock-bottom type character, and the Savage She-Hulk. It really depends on the decade and who's in charge. That's true enough with every single superhero, though, so what makes her special? To me, personally, I remember watching reruns of the Incredible Hulk animated series growing up, with Cree Summer voicing this fun-loving She-Hulk. She had this feeling of liberation with her character that I just adored.
Hey, babe, you got a phone number?
I'm way out of your area code, babe.
When I was finally old enough to get into comics, I found a character who, to me, represented finding and living for yourself while being comfortable in your own skin. My favorite She-Hulk stories are usually when she was this mean green fiery machine, if that's not too cringe to say. She-Hulk can be both a lawyer and a superhero while looking eye-catching in every and any way that she wants, and was also known to break the fourth wall, being one of the first characters in comics to do so. When you're a tween girl reading comics, having a character who is hot, whether you think she is or not, even though she clearly is, because comic women usually are, is cool to see. She may be confident in her green skin, but She-Hulk and Jennifer are more or less the same character, usually having physicality be the real difference between them. Without a Hannah Montana secret identity thing going on, Jennifer is also allowed to be loud, funny, and in your face. Growing up, these were always traits that I've never been very good at, but have really worked to try to integrate into my own life, even now. Now that I've spent like 3 minutes singing this character's praises, let's get into the trailer that Marvel released for She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I'm hesitantly excited for She-Hulk Attorney at Law. It seems like a fun, campy adventure that really is going to highlight characters that I don't think otherwise would have made any cut in the MCU. Frogman isn't really an Avengers level threat, and Jennifer herself low-key feels like she should have been introduced in the Netflix run with Marvel, although that could just be because I would have loved to see her and Daredevil interact. Maybe we'll still get it, who knows? Matt Murdock did make an appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm excited to see something that Marvel hopefully won't take too seriously and just let be a good time. We've had plenty of downers lately with their bigger titles, and it'll be nice to potentially have like a throwback to when Marvel didn't take itself too seriously and let loose and have fun with their movies. At least I think so. Anyway, moving on. Just to kick this off, I'm going to talk about how She-Hulk looks, because the rest of the internet clearly hasn't done that enough. It looks and feels like an easy thing to point out, and I know like half of Twitter has said the same thing, but Jen is a tad slim for my liking. She has more of a runner's build than a muscular stature, although I do love how large her hands are proportional to the rest of her. A lot of shots just don't give you a good feeling or establish her relative size, particularly compared to her environment. It isn't really necessary to have her look super hulky, but the way that she looks isn't really necessarily my cup of tea. In my Masters of the Universe Revelations video, I brought up my feelings on muscular character design, on feminine characters, and why I like it when it's applicable. I use She-Hulk as an example in that, and I stand by it. Although not as strong as her cousin, Jennifer is a physically intimidating character. Part of what makes her hot, at least to some audiences, myself included, is her muscles. Stay with me here. If Marvel's using CGI anyway, I'm disappointed they didn't really push the limits of what they could do. I mean, like, look at the Hulk. He is comically large in stature, definition, and musculature. Particularly with the established look, Jennifer just feels a little off to me. She-Hulk can be model-esque and muscular. I think Marvel is really missing an opportunity to establish a distinct looking character. Since it does kind of feel like Marvel is pushing their female characters to the forefront anyway, why not throw a character in who looks like an Amazonian goddess? You know what I mean? Actually, you know what does look good on her though? Is her hair. I love the way that She-Hulk's hair looks on the show. It looks big and green, and I do kind of wish they went with like the curly Jennifer hair for She-Hulk. But you know what? I like it. I like how it looks. The series does seem to be pulling a lot of its plot and story from Dan Slott's run with the character. Physically and aesthetically, her design reminds me a lot of John Byrne's run with She-Hulk, which was a time she was often depicted in a particularly sexy or flirty way. You won't hear any complaints from me with Byrne's run. He wasn't afraid of pushing proportion, something that Marvel is clearly a bit more uncomfortable with. So aside from just talking about how She-Hulk looks, is there anything else that I saw in the trailer worth mentioning? Yes, but I don't know how well I'll be able to explain it. I'm excited to see how the series plays with Jennifer's origin and ultimately what kind of She-Hulk we get to see. In the comics, Jennifer becomes She-Hulk. She had been shot by people associated with a case that she'd been working, and so becomes mean and green after getting a blood transfusion from Bruce. I don't know if Marvel will necessarily go with that origin, although we do see a car accident in the trailer, so maybe that or a similar disaster will be the cause. We also get to see some additional characters in the new show, like Abomination, who's back, last seen in Shang-Chi, and before that, I think the Hulk movies are the only time we saw him, unless he appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something. I have no idea. Those Hulk movies are canon to the MCU. They have a different Bruce Banner, but I think that they still count. I know Wong will be in the series too, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him and Abomination. Titania is also supposed to be a big player in the series, and she's probably one of She-Hulk's most recognizable villains. The most recent that I've seen her was in Rainbow Rowell's She-Hulk series from this year. Side note, Titania's outfit in the trailer is campy and fun, but I'm really hoping we get a few different outfits, particularly one that's closer or basically the same as her all-purple outfit from the comics that I think is what people think of when you think of Titania. I also love that Jennifer has a Midsummer's Night Dream poster in her room, since Titania is the name of the fairy queen in that story. It's just a cute little detail. I'm sure someone else has said it, mentioned it, brought it up, whatever, but I thought it was cute. I know people are thinking this show takes place somewhere during the 5 years between the snap and the blip, and if that's true, it'll be interesting to see how they mix elements and references from that time. Although, particularly with the Madame Hydra storyline, they've kind of been playing with and building up. I don't know if I believe that, or maybe it takes place in a super current timeline post Bruce's arm getting fixed, since we do see a damage at the end of Shang-Chi. With the idea of a superhero lawyer, I'm also interested in how this will reflect not only what we've seen, like Peter Parker's Spider-Man trial in No Way Home, but also future stuff, like the Ms. Marvel series coming out. So we know that superheroes, Inhumans, mutants, something like that is going to happen eventually in the MCU. What does that mean for Jennifer and her law firm, especially if they're going to be the quintessential superhero lawyers? You know what I mean? There's a lot of questions that I have that could be really interesting. It's gonna come down to how crazy and how much disbelief Marvel wants us to have with the series. We see what looks like a maximum security prison, where I assume Abomination has been this entire time. The holding cell we see is the same as the portal in Shang-Chi, so I'm not sure how Wong would know or be involved in any of that. Maybe the Sorcerer Supreme is working for the US government, but it all seems very confusing to me. I've never claimed to be good at theorizing, and I'm gonna leave that to the rest of YouTube. Overall, I'm intrigued more than excited about She-Hulk. It'll be interesting to see how they blend comedy, superheroing, and Jen's lawyer stuff together to create what is hopefully a cohesive story with a character that I hold particularly close to my heart. I have pretty mixed feelings about the Disney Plus series and shows so far, with Loki still being my bottom of the barrel. I could go on a whole tangent about that. I've never been a big Loki fan. I didn't really like his series. Anyway, I think I'm gonna be reasonably happy just to see this show get made. I mentioned it earlier, but She-Hulk just wouldn't have been in my top picks of any characters to get a series from Marvel, but I'm so glad that they're giving it a shot. I am hoping for something lighthearted and fun, more so than what we've been getting recently, but only time will tell with the show. It's still a while until it's out, and both what we know about the series and my opinion on it could drastically change. Until then, I'm on the edge of my seat. Let's see what happens, you know? It could be good, it could be bad. Either way, it's going to exist. Thanks again for listening to my rambling. I know this video is very random, but so is literally everything else that I've ever made. I'm trying this new thing where I just make videos about topics that I'm interested in and try not to care too much about the outcome or other people's opinions. We'll see how long that lasts. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for checking out. My next video should be another webtoon thing, unless I get my act together and make that magical boy video. I need to do that one because I mentioned it in the last one too. We'll see. Anyway, thanks YouTube. Catch you later.